Dr. Milobsky, I'm so happy to have you on as a guest. I've been really, really looking forward to this.
Amazing. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks, Jessica.
So I have to admit, I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts. I've been watching your Instagram, and we have so much in common. So much of our philosophy around parenting and pediatrics is very similar. And it's nice to meet someone who is like-minded.
Yeah, in pediatrics, it's nice to find people who are fully aligned on all these levels. It's rare.
My podcast title is Your Child is Normal, and your podcast title is Your Kids Will Be Fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So from the outset,
we have a lot of overlap, probably. Anxiety is one of the biggest issues in parenting in 2026. I think it becomes a massive roadblock and obstacle because people are so overloaded that they never feel comfortable or confident about what decision they're making because there's always information coming in to make them doubt themselves, and people have no self-trust anymore. And I think that is, what we're both trying to combat.
I say all the time, parents need to lean into their own parenting instinct more and more. If we did that more, everybody would feel better and the kids would be better off for it.
I agree. Look, we can all agree that parents in the 70s probably were a little bit further than they should be. The pendulum was all the way on the side of, I don't need to know what you're doing or where you are ever, ever, ever. And the problem is it's sort of swung way far to the other side, so we probably need to come back more towards the middle.
I can get behind that. I agree. I work with my dad, and he notices that the younger patients have fewer questions, and the older patients tend to have more and more questions, and there's some sweet spot to be had.
Sure. Well, the younger patients are all consulting AI for 90% of their questions.
Right. Okay, so before we get into your parenting philosophy, I'd love to learn more about you. So can you tell everybody about yourself, what got you into pediatrics, how many kids you have, which I think is a really fascinating stat, personally, as a mom of three?
Sure. So I grew up on the East Coast in suburban Washington, D.C. I went to college in Philadelphia, and I did med school residency and fellowship in Baltimore, where I met my wife, first year of med school. When I finished my pediatric residency, we had just had our first child, who is now 30. And during pediatric residency, we had 2 more kids. So we had 3 boys under the age of 4. After initiating a fellowship, we started deciding on where I was going to have my first job. So we moved to Denver, Colorado in January of 2000. And so we're going to do it on a trial basis. So the trial run is currently in its 25th year in Denver. And I started my career and I practiced 15 years as a full-time pediatric emergency hospital critical care specialist in the hospitals around Metro Denver. And we added 4 more kids to our family. We had our 4 daughters in Denver, so we have 7 children total. And then 15 years ago, I opened up my primary care practice. That's Pediatrics at the Meadows. And not long after that, we started our concierge. That started as an urgent care practice. That's Chicken Soup Pediatric Concierge Care. And over the pandemic, it became clear that mental health began to overwhelm the practice. And so we had to open up actually a separate mental health clinic so we could manage the practice and the mental health. And that's the Way Center. And we do adolescent mental health and addiction. So those are kind of where we are now. We now have 4 grandchildren and only 2 left at home. We have another child getting married this summer. Our oldest daughter is getting married this summer. So we're well on the way to that side of parenting, for sure.
So it sounds like you have a lot going on in your life, a lot of wonderful things going on in your life between your family, your work, your urgent care. You have a podcast. You have a very big Instagram and TikTok account.
Podcast.
You have a lot to keep you busy.
Yeah, it's a lot. Just, and the social media part has really shown up in the last year. I mean, I'm sure you follow my account. I had a big health challenge and had my left leg amputated below the knee this past summer. But now, thank God, I'm back to being as fully healthy as I've been in the longest time, and really leaning into the content creation, reaching more people that way, the podcast, social media, and the concierge practice, for sure.
It's wonderful. I'm really happy for you that your health is okay and that you're doing well.
Thank God. It was the best thing I ever did. Should have done it 2 years ago.
And I'm curious, I know that the title of the podcast is pretty self-explanatory, Your Kids Will Be Fine. But how did you come up with this title?
One of the biggest issues and things I said coming up in my own parenting journey, my first kid was born in 96. Our 7th kid was born in 2010. My own parenting journey is I see that we are now so entwined with information overload. And that has created this constant sense of uneasiness and uncertainty and disconnection with our own parenting. And And I see it reflected in more and more of my interactions where people are literally paralyzed with their own self-doubt and their own anxiety. And that is now being passed on to their children. And this constant sense that we're getting it wrong and what's going to be and that I can't get it right. I see all this information coming at me and why can't it be that way? And I think it's harming our kids, this constant sense of hyper-involvement, hyper-entwinement, overwhelming anxiety. And people just need to know that if you step back, your kids will be fine. And you just have to lean into who you are, being the best version of yourself, tuning out more noise, trusting yourself more. And that's where the idea of the podcast came from.
And why do you think we live in this age of parental overwhelm? I mean, I know the obvious answer is the internet, social media. Do you think that's it, or do you think there's more to the story? I
think it's two things. One is we're much more mobile. I live in Denver, Colorado. The vast majority of my families, and my practice is pretty big, aren't from here and live far away from their family of connections. I think more and more that's becoming common. So we're more disconnected from our family who has traditionally been part of our parenting village, as it were, and the fact that it's inescapable that our lives and how we think and how we judge what we're doing in others is entwined with social media and information overload. So I think it's those two things.
I completely agree with you. It's like you don't have your parent living nearby in many cases to ask them for questions, to ask them for advice. So you go to the easiest thing. You just search for it online.
Right. Mommy groups on Facebook and Instagram. And so I think there's more people, thankfully, that are providing a more balanced and rational view on Instagram, but it's overwhelmed, I think, by the influencer, I think, part of Instagram. And I think people don't know where to turn. People are having a harder time sourcing what information is real and valid and what information isn't, and it's overwhelming.
I agree with that. And I also think a piece of this fear comes from the fact that clickbait sells, fear sells. If something scares you, you're more likely to get eyes on it, to click it. And I think that's driving up a lot of parental anxiety as well, I think.
Well, that's how, people fail to recognize that's how we're wired. Our brains are wired to focus on the negative because that used to protect us. But in today's day and age, that just overwhelms us.
And I have to admit, there's a lot of social media that I don't like, but also you can find good information like your account, for example, that I think can be a nice calming source.
You can. It's out there. You just have to, but you have to filter through it. And I think our brains with scrolling get dragged more to the clickbait, the negative, and the fear-based stuff because that's how we're wired. It's harder to find. It's harder to filter out.
So do you have any advice for parents to have more of a discerning eye when it comes to finding quality content on social media?
One is, I think, engage less, and that's easy to say and harder to do.
I like that.
So engage less. I think people have to get more in touch with their own, who they are and their own instincts, because so much of what actually shows up as effective, warm, and connected parenting, you already know. And it's overwhelmed by what you think you don't know. So I think that's part of it. The biggest part of the journey, and for me personally, has been just getting in touch with me, healing old wounds, understanding why I react instead of respond, and just being the best version of myself. And that has had huge impact. And it's never too late, even when your kids are older. When your kids see that, it's authentic and it's genuine, and it works. So that I think, are the most important things to focus on.
I think it's a really nice point to bring up because I do find that a lot of parents feel like they can't say sorry. They have to be an image of perfection for their kids. Yep. But I do think as a parent, if you show up with honesty, with sensitivity and vulnerability, I think you end up being closer because of it.
100%. I think you're modeling for your kids something that you want them to be able to do.
Right. And we're not perfect.
No one is. And all of our parents got it wrong sometimes. And we all get it wrong, but to be able to lean into it and embrace it and be vulnerable about it and keep showing up, that sends a hugely powerful message to your kid, way more than any parenting hack or any script that an influencer gives you to deal with your toddler, any of those things. So
I have to tell you, one thing that I really appreciate about your social media information is that you're not black and white. you're very forgiving on the advice you give. So you sleep train or you don't sleep train. You start with solids at 6 months or you don't start with solids at 6 months. There's wiggle room there. There's nuance there, which I think
Right.
is honest and real life. So
It is. Raising kids isn't a black and white endeavor. And every kid is different. Every kid is like a Rubik's Cube to solve. This week alone, I think I had half a dozen parents come pulling their hair out about their kids and their relationship to solids and foods, because there's two kinds of babies in the world. One group of babies, you introduce them to food and they act like they were a fish thrown into water. And where's this been my whole life? And it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you have this whole other group of babies who, for absolutely no reason, you put food in their mouth and they act like you're putting battery acid in their mouth, and they hate it, and it's a whole process, and it causes so much stress and anxiety. And so parents being able to recognize that these are just two different normal types of people. They each need a different approach. You can't have one approach that works for every kid at every phase, for every stage. And you have to be able to have forgiveness and grace for yourself and wiggle room and not dogmatic, because raising kids is not a fixed box. And listen, we could accuse our boomer parents that that's how they raise kids, and that's true. And some of it was okay. And now we know better. Now we can improve on it.
To your point, I always say the line, kids either eat to live or they live to eat.
Exactly. Those are the two kinds of kids in the world, 100%. Very few things create more stress, anxiety, and hyperfixation in the parents than eating and sleeping.
I completely agree with
pooping.
you. And
I think pooping is the third.
pooping.
And I tell people you can't make any sentient human being at any age. You can't make anybody eat anything. You cannot make anybody fall asleep at a particular time, and you cannot make anybody poop. You have to have buy-in and on all three of those things. So all you can do is provide structure and opportunity. That's it. That's all you can do.
Structure and opportunity.
That's it.
There's a friend of mine, Dr. Scott Cohen. He actually wrote a book called Eat, Sleep, and Poop.
Oh, yeah. That's a great title. It's because the three essential parts of being a human being that no one else can control.
That's actually a really interesting point. It's true.
You can't impose that on anybody.
You can't. I mean, you can set it up and you can make
it. You can put
it out
structure,
there.
You can provide dietary choices, and you can provide access. All these things, you can just provide it. And ultimately, it's up to the human being, whether that's a 3-month-old, a 6-month-old, a 1-year-old, or a 5-year-old, or whatever, to do it.
Yes. And I'm just curious your thoughts on this, because when it comes to feeding and the stress around feeding, I find it so interesting because, if you look at adults, most of us have the opposite problem of not eating enough, right? Most of us have the issue where we've gained too much weight. And so I always find it curious that there's so much stress for parents around their kids and lack of eating. Where do you think that comes from?
I think people are very fixated on the growth chart. I think that's how that it becomes a referendum on whether I'm a good parent or a bad parent, and parenting the public sphere and feeling judged. And I think people are so hyper focused on that. Once again, because of the digital social media culture, I think that's part of it. And two, I think people are so hyper focused on, well, if he doesn't eat, he won't grow, and he won't be tall enough, he won't be smart enough, and all of those things, I think, inhabit that hyper anxious space that too many parents live in now.
Yes, I have to admit, I think a lot of it for me came from my mom. My mom has a lot of stress around not seeing her kids eat and not eating enough. Will it make them wake up at night? Will they go to bed hungry? And
God forbid.
Right.
Hungry in LA is just never happened. No.
Right. I mean, that's what's so interesting is that we live in a land of surplus and kids aren't starving. I mean, by and large, most kids are healthy, and we know eventually they're going to eat. So it is definitely a curious.
100%. Parents create stories and scenarios in our head, and then the anxiety part starts to kick off, and then we react. And so one of my biggest tools for that, and once again, eating being part of it, I always remind people that once kids hit the toddler years, appetites change, their connection to food changes. They'll eat a couple meals a week that you can see them eat, and they usually all do fine.
Right. And I'll hear like common themes. Oh, my kid they don't eat meat. That's a really common one. Toddlers don't eat meat, and I have to
exactly.
reassure
Now,
them.
listen, I always have, once again, you talk about balance, but yet iron is by far the most essential nutrient that kids need during their toddler years because of how much iron your brain requires to make more brains and to balance your melatonin and your sleep cycle. So, and the other thing is around that, you said, yes, toddlers don't eat meat and they're reactive. And yet also parents have such intolerance for their own children's discomfort that they over accommodate. That's a normal reaction, but they over accommodate. How? Well, if at least he's drinking enough milk, or if he drinks milk all the time, I feel better. That's reactive. And then your kid ends up drinking 28 ounces to 45 ounces of milk a day, and they become more iron deficient, and then it sets the whole thing off even more.
And it's true. I notice when my kids eat vegetables, the happiness that it brings me, it doesn't make sense.
The joy and
it puts
light.
me in such a good mood.
I
wow,
feel it
you
here
ate spinach?
Deep in my soul.
You had kale? Right. You finished the broccoli serving I gave you? The day is a good day. And it doesn't make intuitive sense, but it's true.
But I think we can all acknowledge where that comes from. It makes us feel like good parents. We are doing a good job because my kid did X or Y or Z. And as Russell Barkley, who's my favorite voice in this space, is fond of saying, that your child is born with 400 personality traits that will emerge as they age. They are not a blank slate that you get to write on, and they are just who they are, and they have nothing to do with you. All you can do is show up and provide a nurturing space for those things to show up. And so when your kid performs, like eating the kale, or, oh, he was nice to the other kid in the sandbox, whatever that is, I'm doing this right. And we have to maybe separate from that a little bit more.
No, absolutely. And I take a step back and I think about all the junk food I had as a kid and all the fast food I consumed, and right? I mean, as the moderation saying goes, it probably doesn't matter. So. And I'm fine. Yes. And I was not breastfed.
Well, that's why you're a pediatrician and not an orthopedist, Dr. Hochman. There you go. That's where it came out.
That's where it came out. I'm going to have to complain to my mom
about
that. I'll tell my mom that
one.
Yes. No, and I love how you shine a light on the fact that we as parents, as much as we like to think that we have a role in how our kids turn out, they really are who they are, wouldn't you say?
Correct. That's another Russell Barkley-ism, is that you're a shepherd and not an engineer. All you're responsible for is providing the field, for the sheep to graze in. That's a nurturing space, a present space, a healthy space where they have access to a normal amount of stimulation and reasonably nutritious food and a bed to sleep in and a roof over the head. That's the field that you can provide. But outside of that, you have very little to do with who they become after they're born.
So if I show my kids flashcards with history facts or addition or multiplication,
Mandarin. Well, I mean, look, we all agree that children need a basic amount of stimulation.
Yes,
but beyond the basic normal amount, which is, the problem with the social media is that everybody wants you to tell them, well, what is that? What exactly is that? Well, you're around, you're loving, you're warm, you read to your kids. We all acknowledge reading to your kids. But the diminishing returns beyond that are huge. There isn't much more beyond that you get. So showing your kids flashcards in Mandarin and getting them to repeat Shakespearean sonnets or flooding them with Mozart every free moment they're not engaged doesn't do anything, and it beyond what you're already doing.
I totally agree with that. My husband and I are both physicians, and we are not of the theatrical type.
Yeah.
And my third daughter, all she does, if I leave her alone, she's in her own room singing songs.
Right. That's not you guys, huh? You guys aren't. Your husband aren't doing the Hamilton together. You're not doing it.
No. And it's amazing, actually. I mean, I look at her in awe because I wonder, where did she come from? She's yesterday singing songs from the play Annie all by herself with lots of emotion. And I had nothing to do with that, I don't think. I mean, I know I'm her mom, but she is who she is.
Exactly. And giving them the space to do that and recognizing that covers so many places of who they are right from the beginning, how organized they are, how temperamental and sensitive they are to their environment, how they eat, how they sleep. That's all part of the software. And then all that then unfolds and opens into other elements of their personality. They're just present and are going to show up, and being able to hold space for that as a parent and receive it and respond into terms of what, because not every kid needs the same thing from you in the same way at the same time. One of my kids needed to be attached starting at 6 weeks, because that's how this kid regulated and couldn't function other way. And some of my kids you could leave next to the furnace, and that was it. They were
Right.
like, everyone is completely
Right.
different. Not that I left them next to the furnace. I'm just saying, right? But it's
As you say that, I'm thinking I had one thumbsucker, one kid who needed to be swaddled, one kid who wanted a pacifier, and one kid who wanted none of it.
right. And
She didn't need anything.
and every one of those things is okay, because you're responding to, well, my other kids didn't get that, so I'm just going to do it this way. That's kind of how our grandparents and our parents did it. And yeah, there's some merits to understanding that, hey, this is how we do things, but we now understand that it's okay to actually give each kid what they need, and they all don't need the same things.
And I think this is so helpful just for parents that worry they're not doing enough,
Right.
that as long as you show up for your kids, you give them the feeling of love and security, they're going to be who they're going to be, and they'll make you proud, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. And that was the post I put up yesterday, because I was having this discussion with a family. And, when all 7 of my kids are home now, which doesn't happen often, you can't interact with any of them and figure out, well, this one was breastfed till he was 3, and this one slept in our bed till he was 2. And this one only ate French fries for a year. And this one, it's hard. You can't tell the difference by interacting with them.
Right. I think if I was with them, maybe I could tell.
What's that? Well,
I don't know.
Put
Maybe
them in
if
a
I
room
was
and
with them, maybe I
interrogated
could
them, maybe it would come out. But I mean, just casual interactions, hard.
Can't tell from the personality.
No.
Yeah.
No.
My brother-in-law says the line that I like a lot. He says, as parents, our job is to provide 2 things: high support and high expectations.
I think that's true. I think there's nothing wrong with having expectations, as long as it's not this oppressive and punitive type of, and
Completely.
that compliance and performance are not conditional or transactional things that generate love. Like warmth and closeness should be completely disconnected from expectations.
I think that is a really, really important point to remind parents, because we can easily get caught up, especially I don't know what you think, but especially I think it's really easy to compare your kid to the neighbor's kid, to the other kid at school. The comparison game, I think, is tricky for parents. Like, I had a parent this week who was concerned because her child was not doing as well as the other kids in math. However, when you talk to this mother, her child is brilliant when it comes to drawing and art skills, and has the lead in the school play. And I think you just want to follow their gifts. And if you lean into their gifts, that will make you feel better. That will make your child feel better. The end result will be what needs to happen.
Yeah, there was a concept that I intuitively understood, but was introduced to as a concept by Michael McLeod, who's an amazing guy in the ADHD space.
Shout out to Michael McLeod, by the way.
Shout out to Michael
fantastic.
McLeod. By the way, this is a huge resource, the Executive Function Playbook. It's actually on my desk. But the way he articulated it, it was so intuitive when I heard it, because so many people already do this. But children, to your point, need a third place, meaning school is a place and home is a place. But all kids need to thrive in a third place, and that's a place where they are building an identity away from their parents and away from just grades. That is mostly a place where their uniqueness and their strengths and who they are celebrated and elevated, whether that's a theater, whether that's summer camp, or it could be your grandparents' house. It could be your theater or scouts or team sports. For me, it was team sports, but it doesn't have to be, is the point. It can be any of those things. But when you said that this parent was hyper-focused on her child's math grade, but yet this child did all these other amazing things. All kids need a place where they can express that and bring that out in themselves, where they can feel that. Because, grades are grades. At my house, I grew up in a house where grades, compliance, and performance equaled love and affection. And creating a very different environment in my own home around the fact that grades are grades. They have nothing to do with who you are and why and what we think of you and what's going to happen. It's not about, grades are not life. And so it took intentionality to do that because that's not how I was raised.
And I think more and more people are realizing that.
Yeah, I think people are coming to that, but it's hard, especially in hyper-competitive, highly educated communities where there's this sense of, what school or college your child gets into is the sum total of who you are as a parent.
So I'm curious, I find it so interesting that you opened up a mental health clinic in addition to your pediatric practice. Do you have any general advice for parents who tend to be more of the worriers?
Yeah.
Like, what is your approach to families that lean more high anxiety?
So what I've seen that is that a lot of the parents who are high anxiety are not tuned in to their own anxiety. And then that presents as micromanagement and hyper helicoptering their own kids. And that is stifling their own children's mental and emotional development, their sense of competence and independence, being able to fail and learn from it, and their children's own growth mindset that any kind of an ability is trainable. Like this is not, who I am is not fixed. I can always learn and grow and get better at anything I choose to. And anxiety puts a heavy weight on all of those things, parental anxiety. And trying to tune people in and make them aware of that is a real part of my task in mental health, because I think a lot of parents are blind to it. They just think that they're being good parents by this.
That it's helpful and protective.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I agree that a little bit of a protective instinct, I think, is a great thing.
Sure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, but I'm sure you read, have read Jonathan Haidt, recently Anxious Generation. Then, of course, before that, it was the coddling of the American mind. But this culture of safetyism has crept way too far. Yes, parents have to provide a reasonable amount of security and oversight that's developmentally and age appropriate. But we also have to be able to allow certain amount of, in a safe way, risk and failure.
I completely agree. If you keep them from going out into life and trying a little bit of risk,
right,
in the end, it doesn't serve them well.
But and once again, that third space can often be a safe place to then experience those things, to put yourself out there and fall short. But then it's okay because no one hates you or judges you for it. Then you can show up and try again and build skills. That's where that's such a critical element that, when we live in more disconnected societies and hyper-managed parenting and hyper-scheduled lifestyles, that gets lost.
Do you ever feel like there are there, and I agree with you, I think on the whole, parents, we do our kids a disservice by being too restrictive. We should, in their best interest, really try to let them be free and explore on their own without us always around and hyper-managing their schedules and who they're with and what they do. But are there certain situations where you think parents are in the right to be more protective?
Sure. I mean, I think let's take examples that are coming more and more in schools. I think bullying. It's a very sensitive topic for me because I experienced it relentlessly, and it was really, I didn't feel supported or protected. I felt dismissed. And so having one of my kids experience it was very triggering for me, having to kind of explore that for myself. But that's a great example of where, a parent needs to show up and advocate and sometimes come to their kid's side and aid and speak up for them, because bullying is so toxic and kids become so dysregulated and they can't speak up, especially now bullying can occur now 24 hours a day,
Right.
So,
I like that you said that, because bullying can be so insidious. Sometimes you have no idea as a parent when they should be speaking up for themselves and learning that lesson.
Yeah, I mean, listen, bullying is one of those
things
where you want to teach your kid to speak up for themselves and not be a target, but at the same time, you have to be an advocate and engage the resources where your kid is, that it shouldn't be tolerated. So your kid has to feel that you are on their side.
Absolutely. And is this something?
That's a good example, but a bad example is never letting your kid out of your sight, even at age and in development appropriate ways, because you're worried they're going to be abducted by a child predator, which is at this point very, very unlikely, less than you're likely your kid getting hit by lightning at the park. So you have to balance those two things.
Yes. Dr. Peter Gray, who I've had on the podcast before, he talks about how take out family dynamics that might cause some strain. The odds of your child getting kidnapped, as you said, the odds are higher that they'll be struck by lightning.
100%. It is so unlikely as to be something that we really shouldn't be spending a lot of time on anymore. It was way worse in the 70s and 80s. Like it was an actual legitimate concern. Your kid is way more in danger online. That's where predators are looking and finding your kid, not looking to throw them in a van at the park. Not that it never happens. We can't say it never, ever happens. But from a risk assessment standpoint, they're way more at risk from predators online.
Right. I would say that's where I, as a parent, am the most protective.
Yeah.
I think I am pretty relaxed when it comes to what they're eating, who they're with, where they go. But online, my mama bear does come out.
And that's appropriate. I want every parent to read Anxious Generation. I think it provides a paradigm for how we should all be approaching this topic with our kids starting very early on, and how the school system should also be aligning with parents on this topic as well.
Yes, I'm such a big fan of his that I went to go hear him speak maybe a year ago. And I really think the message that he relays that really hits home to me is that we as parents really need to be less protective in the real world and more protective on the online world.
Correct. That's where we should be exercising the most guardrails.
So in addition to your philosophy about your kids will be fine, are there any other overarching parenting philosophies that you impart frequently to your patients?
Yeah. And a lot of this I didn't learn in residency or medical school. I learned it through my own parenting journey and my own challenges. But one is that I don't give my kids a lecture or engage them in anything unless I'm prepared or I'm already modeling or working on that behavior in front of them. Hey, put your phone down more. Hey, you should exercise more. Hey, you should take care of yourself. You should eat better.
Right.
Those are things that I make sure that I myself fully engaged in and integrating in front of them. And the second one is I think that in general, there's no parenting hacks or this parenting style versus that parenting style. In order to be the best parent for your child, you have to be the best version of yourself. And kids are all here to teach us something about ourselves that we need to learn. All of us carry wounds from our own childhood that come out in reactivity when we're triggered by certain things in our kids. And until we're able to really look into those ourselves, for ourselves, and then bring that into how we show up as a parent, that's how you be the best parent, period, regardless of any technique or hack or parenting style.
No, thank you for that. It's so hard because all of this also takes time. And I think when you're a parent and you're in it with your kids and you're thinking, how do I make the time for the gym? And how do I make the time to read the book that I need to read? Yeah, exactly. That I need to read. Yeah, it's how do I get enough sleep if I want to be the best version of myself? Right. But I think you can always try.
Well, once again, it's not about perfection. It's about showing up.
Yes. One line that I like is, your kids want your presence, not your presence.
Yeah.
That's what they want. They want you to be there.
Right. And you keep showing up and you're going to make mistakes, and then being curious about where that came from, acknowledging it, and then working on it, and then showing up again.